Hey everyone, it's Jody Sutter of the Sutter Company, and welcome to Just Ask Jody Live, my monthly LinkedIn Live series. So, this time we're going to be talking about a topic that most of us love to hate, and that is the pitch process, right? So, we're in the business. When you're doing the business, obviously, you are engaged in some kind of process with the client. But what we're really going to be focusing on is more of that sort of formal agency review process when a client says, I've got a scope of work, I've got a budget, and now I'm going to go into a form of formal agency review. And the fact is that it's not perfect. There are lots of flaws. There are lots of areas for improvement. And yet we've been talking about this. I've been in this business for probably longer than I'd like to admit. And it's a topic that has been active for the entire time I've been in advertising. And it probably was a topic active before that. And here's just before I invite my guest in, here's why I think this is such a rich topic. And it's because, well, here's why we haven't found a better solution. It's because when a marketer needs to hire an agency, what sometimes I think we on the agency side we forget about how much risk is involved for that marketer. There's a risk in terms of potential lost revenue, lost opportunity, costs, goodwill of their team who has to run the review, loss of time. If they make a poor choice, so many things can be lost. Of course, if they make a great choice, everything's going to be great, but still there's that risk involved. And I think as an industry, we can do a lot to help clients understand how we as agencies can help mitigate the risk in ways that doesn't necessarily involve doing spec work. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about that. I have as my guest today, Matt Kasindorf, who is the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Intelligence at the 4As. And Matt and I go back a long way. He and I first met, again, probably longer than I'd like to admit, when we were both working at OMD. I was running the business development for the Eastern region, and Matt was a group account director. Matt has got a long and illustrious career with all sorts of advertising agencies, primarily working in account director and leadership roles. And you've been at the 4As. Hey, Matt, you've been at the 4As for how long now? A few years, right?
6.5 years.
Oh my God, I can't believe it's that long. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm looking forward to talking about this. So the agency review process. I think first, maybe what I'd like to do is tell the folks who are viewing, by the way, everyone who's watching, please do take advantage of the fact that we're both here live to send us questions and ask us comments. I've got Megan, my team member, in the background too, and she'll make sure that we see everything that you post. So Matt, you at the 4As, first of all, I'd like you to do a couple of things. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your role at the 4As, and for anyone who doesn't know what the 4As is, to tell us about the 4As, and then also tell us about this research study that you're about to release.
Will do. So for those who don't know, the 4As is the American Association of Advertising Agencies. It is your trade association, so the trade association for agencies. And we have there is a parallel organization, because I'm going to be mentioning it, called the ANA, or Association of National Advertisers, and it's the trade association for the clients. And that's pretty much the way to think about the two. My role within the 4As is, as you mentioned, it's business intelligence and insight. And my area of focus is on business development, client agency relationship management, a little bit in terms of negotiating with marketing procurement and other things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things the study that you guys have put out, 4As, or you're about to put out, 4As and ANA, I mean, in some ways, up until recently, the 4As and ANA have been a little bit like, I don't know if the Hatfields and the McCoys is really the perfect analogy, but there's been some tension between what marketers feel like they need and what the agencies feel that they need.
Absolutely. I think the direction and the sort of the impetus for bringing these organizations together was encapsulated with our new CEO, Marla Kaplowitz. myself and one or two other folks, Molly Rosen at the 4As, in terms of the industry can only move forward if the two organizations are working together.
Yeah, I agree.
We talk about, and I think, anybody in this call would agree, it's important for clients and agencies to have a strong working relationship, honest communication, and pretty much ongoing dialogue.
Yeah,
And the fact
absolutely.
that the two organizations were not doing that was a little maybe disingenuous. So we kind of said we've got to fix that, and
Yeah.
we've got to create a better working relationship with the ANA. And I think if anybody has seen or heard anything about the ANA's AFM, or Advertising Financial Management Conference, that took place in May, the 4As, and including our board chair, Sharon Napier, we had 4 presentations on their stage, and that's unprecedented.
Wow. Yeah.
And then we also had Bob Leodes, who's the CEO of the ANA, open up what we call our MPF, or Management Practitioners Forum, that conference, first week of June. He joined Marla Kaplowitz, our president and CEO, to open up that conference.
Yeah. Wow. That is, I think that is really exciting. I think, again, as someone who's primarily on the agency side, it's very exciting to see that type of collaboration. So tell us a little bit about one of the fruits of that collaboration, this report that's about to come out. And then let's talk about pitching.
Okay. So the report that's about to come out is something that we probably have been working on for half a year or so with the ANA. And it is going to be the first time ever that the actual hard and soft costs of an agency review to the marketer have been quantified. So, everybody knows agencies spend a lot of money when pitching a piece of business, whether it's an incumbent trying to keep the business, or it's a new agency getting call it what you will, net new logo, net new, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of money that agencies spend, and we've documented that over the years. But nobody had ever stopped to say, well, actually, what does this cost the marketer? And fingers crossed, if all goes well, next week we will be issuing the release of that report, and we will have it available probably the week after on our website.
So not to put you in a position where you feel like you need to reveal anything too soon, but it sounds to me that probably one of the conclusions is that it also is a cost for marketers as well. Is that accurate to say?
That is accurate. And without giving away the specifics, I will say it is a rather substantial cost to the marketers, both in terms of hours and time, and then certainly some hard costs as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
So that to me also sounds like if up until now, if for quite literally decades, agencies have been complaining that the review process is, I don't know if unfair is the right word, but it's certainly the review process can be one-sided. The review process can be difficult to navigate. The review process can feel like agencies don't really have a great and a fair forum for expressing their ideas and their credentials. But up until now, what you're saying is that marketers really have had very little incentive to change, because as I was saying before you joined us, it's really about the risk. What they see is like, well, that's really, too bad that agencies have to work so hard to pitch our business, but we stand to lose so much if we make the wrong choice. So sorry. So this sounds like if they understand their costs, we really are setting the groundwork for potentially new rules for better and fairer pitching. Is that right? Would you say?
I think we're going to get there. I think You articulated that very well in terms of the risk, because it's a huge risk. It's a risk to careers, it's a risk to livelihood, everything else. Does not mean it has to be solved just by spec work. There are other very viable ways to understand how an agency operates. One particular market overseas, the majority of reviews end at the chemistry stage, because they say, okay, we kind of understand each other. We are aligned in what we're looking for, and based upon an agency's past work. And I'll say this, and this has been something that we've been discussing a bit. The way to show that you can replicate your good work. So there are processes that the way you get to good work becomes a repeatable process.
Yep.
And so a client is kind of assured it's not a one-off, that great work was done for that other client. So yeah, I think we are going to get there eventually. I think one of the things that is going to come out of this particular piece of research with the ANA is that while there are certainly viable reasons for holding an agency review, and there are irreconcilable differences, and something happens, and you need a new agency, or if there are capabilities, services, something that you need as a marketer that your agency either can't or won't provide for some reason, it's time to hold a review and find another partner. But in a lot of cases, when you think about, every relationship has its ups and downs, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And when you think about, are there alternatives, right? The first indication that it's not going well, the immediate response may be, oh, let's put it in review. Well, no. What if the immediate response was, hey, let's put in a client agency relationship management program. Let's find a client agency marriage counselor. Yeah. And as I said at the ANA's AFM conference, and I even used the words, I said, folks, I don't want to be facetious, but have a conversation. Take your agency out to dinner, right?
Yeah. Why do you think it is? I mean, I've got a couple of thoughts on this, but why do you think it is so hard for for clients for marketers to take the initiative and have the conversation? And maybe even why do agencies, why don't they more frequently be proactive and sort of bring up the hard topic before the marketer has to?
Jody, it's a great question. I think it's partly human nature.
Yeah.
That, things seem to be going well. Do I want to ask too many questions? The reality is you should, right? Open communication in any relationship is what keeps it going. It keeps it, moving forward. I've had agency search consultants tell me that a client would rather put a piece of business into review than have a conversation with the agency about the fact that they can't afford them anymore.
Oh, wow.
And could there be a reduced fee? I mean, seriously? I think any agency anywhere would rather have a conversation about, yes, we can reduce our fee with a corresponding reduce of scope, but we'll get through this together. Then, wait a second, we're going into review. Why?
Yeah. Before you and I, when we did our little tech check, you were talking about the those reviews that happen that you, when you're on the agency side, were on the receiving end of that email of like, oh yeah, by the way, your account is going in review, without any warning, without any communication from the client. It's like, hey, Matt, listen, we got to have a conversation. Yeah. Painful.
Yeah. And I would listen, any agency would rather have a hard conversation about what they need to do to get their performance back up. And sometimes it's a hard conversation right back with the client, and that's the benefit of a client agency relationship management program that includes 360s. The comment that, well, the agency is always late on getting work out. Mm-hmm. Well, is that the agency's issue? Or, well, let's talk to the client. Let's see, they have a 6-stage approval gate process. Well, maybe that's slowing things down. And, being able to have those kind of honest conversations would keep the relationship moving forward instead of having it blow up.
I also think that sometimes that leads to conversations like the nature of which are, we like, oh, hey, client, Ms. Client, we need to address your 6-stage, stakeholder approval process. But it's not just that. Then it's like we need to address it. And here are some of our thoughts. When we have dealt with similar situations in the past or similar organizations, this has helped. Or would you consider if we narrowed it down or refined the process doing this? It's sort of, I think it also puts you into problem solving mode. And that sounds like, again, another perennial complaint. I find that most marketers, when they give the reason why an agency goes into review, a lot of times it's like, well, I didn't get enough proactive ideas for my client, for my agency, rather.
I think one of the worst things an agency can ever do is take a client for granted.
Happens all the time.
It happens all the time. And, when you think about what does a client need? They need a partner. And yes, let's put aside for a minute the fees and, everything we hear and read about, do more work for less money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I will say the ANA is really starting to suggest to members that you don't choose an agency based upon the lowest price. And when you think about, and this is them saying it, when you think about whether when you're looking for a lawyer, you're looking for an accountant, you're looking for a management consultant, you're looking for some other professional services firm, you don't take necessarily the cheapest one. In fact, you usually don't look for the cheapest one. You look for the most effective one.
Yeah.
So hopefully we will get a little more, fairness is probably not the strongest word, but
it's a loaded term, right?
Yeah, in terms of agency compensation.
Yeah.
But agencies have to be bringing clients ideas. And the fact is they're not going to buy that many. But when the new idea mill stops, they notice it.
Yeah.
And it's a way of showing the client that you really care about their business.
And the new ideas don't necessarily have to be new creative or strategic ideas. They could also be like, hey, we've got a new idea on how to better manage the relationship.
Absolutely. Better manage the relationship. It could be an idea. And again, it goes to how deeply you're involved with your client's business. But, I had an idea once to help a client improve production of a hang tag on their product. And it was just just a little thing thought about. And they were like, oh my God, we should do that. What a great idea.
Hey, I wanted to go back to something you had said about process, because this is something that I also find interesting. And again, anyone who is with us live today, please feel free to put in any questions that you have for Matt into the chat. We'll get to those. But you talk about the having a process, you used a different term, but the term I use is a reliable results process. And, I know on the agency side, we would sort of snicker about the process that only appeared in business development proposals and rarely in real life. But I'm also amazed at how little things like case studies go back and reflect that process. Here you've got this nice linear process. It says we take this step, and then we take this step, and then we take this step. And you go to your case study, and the case study has nothing to do with that process. Are you seeing more agencies embracing this, or do you see, as like I do, a big gap between those two? And any thoughts on how to close that gap?
So that is highlighted often. By search consultants, by marketers. And it's not, Jody, it's not just the process. Sometimes it's the whole agency positioning and philosophy and feelings about life and business. There's a whole lot of great talk about, we believe this, we do this, this is our magic bullet, whatever it may be, and then nothing is reflected in the case study. So,
Yeah.
should case studies be retrofitted? Kind of hard and not necessarily the best thing to do. But as you talk about your cases and you talk about your clients, keep in the back of your mind the other part of what you've talked about, which is the agency and its positioning and its process, and yes, some type of a process. Again, the idea of the process is not to make people believe that you have a proprietary process that nobody else does. It's a way of being able to demonstrate that you can repeat success.
Right. I think for clients also, where they sometimes, this is a real generalization, where they see the creative process as, two people, that art director, copywriter, in the, in their, maybe not a physical office, but, collaborating together, spitballing ideas. Sometimes it'll take a half an hour to come up with a great idea. Sometimes it'll take 3 days. And for I think, for again, that's the risk and kind of the scariness is like, how do we know all this money is going to generate a great idea? And that's when you say a process is this way to wrap some structure around the beautiful unruliness of creativity.
Yep, that's actually a great way to put it.
So yes, think about your process, people. And also, you were saying, I talk a lot about that. Then when an agency loses the thread of their narrative, and how things that you say can be so much more damaging than you realize. If you say one thing on your website, but a different thing in a case study, or a different thing in your proposal, or even, one of the examples I use, this actually happened years ago when I was working with a small agency. It was still being run by an ex big agency guy. He is the father of some campaigns that we all know and love. And but what he was selling was big agency, quality of big agency work in a nimble small agency package. But I was working with him on a proposal, and the proposal they were putting together had this long, heavy discovery process. And I remember saying to him, like, this discovery process might be exactly what the client needs. But you know what it doesn't say to be? It does not say nimble. And yet you're leading with, like, we're nimble, we're fast, we'll get the solutions done quickly. And like, this is what happens is, we don't realize is that I think that type of disconnected message really gets our lizard brain, or amygdala, the sort of fight, flight, or freeze response going. And we get confused, and we feel we don't want to, but I think we feel a little threatened, and then you lose your audience.
Well, I think Jody, it's a great point. I think you immediately lose trust.
Yeah.
Because there's inconsistency, and you don't know, is it this or was it this? I don't really understand. And I think, to your point of the creds, the case studies, LinkedIn, the website, everything has to be consistent. By the way, just like a good agency will counsel its clients that you have to keep your brand throughout all areas, all touch points, and everything else. An agency has to think about the same way, right? While I mention websites, I'll just say one or two things about websites. Is make it really simple for clients, for search consultants, even for other agencies who may be looking to partner, to know what you do.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is really very well hidden.
Because most of us want to be something other than just a plain old agency.
Well, I hear it, but package it, encapsulate it, whatever you want it to be, package it, make sure people get it. You have to realize your virtual front door is your website.
Yeah.
And when somebody goes, and everybody does this, right? The search consultants do it, marketers do it, everybody does a website, takes a look at the agency website.
Yeah.
If it's not pretty crystal clear what you do, and you make it difficult, and you put up a lot of friction, okay, I can't really figure this out. Next.
I'll give an illustration, and it actually it's related to the 4As because, and I think the last time I checked, it is still available. But years ago, you guys did a webinar with Matt Ryan, search consultant, owner of Roth Ryan Hayes. And I think I found it by accident. And one of the things that Matt, he like pulled the curtain open behind his process when he works with a marketer, just initiated an agency review. And one of the things they do, he says he creates what he calls a long list. So a lot of agencies that from there, they'll winnow that down and then contact the agency. So in that long list, as an agency, you don't even know you're on it. And they have a one sheeter. And there's a quick facts about each agency. And he said at the very bottom of that sheet, it says agency is known for fill in the blank. And so I've used that example because I say back to my agencies, like, what do you want to be known for? Like, how are you controlling that situation that you really have very little control over? So what are they saying? What are they putting in the blank? And if you look at your materials and you realize, oh, you know what, they're probably not putting in a very compelling answer, better do something about it.
He's also said, and I think, Matt, I actually was a partner with Matt at an agency. I merged an agency I had into his agency. Yeah, right. So he referenced when he had the agency, it was very hard for us to say no. It was very hard to determine, what are we not going to do? What are we not going to accept as an assignment? What clients are we not going to go after?
Yeah.
And it's only by doing that you can really figure out, okay, this is who we are. And, whether it's knowing a particular audience inside and out, whether it's knowing a particular vertical inside and out, whether it's knowing, multiple verticals that are complementary, if you will.
Right.
Whether it is having types of clients that have a certain appeal in the marketplace, create a thread. Think about what that thread is, and then say, okay, that's what we do. That's what we stand for. And that helps. It helps. I can tell you, it helps search consultants immeasurably. And you have to, by extension, think it's certainly going to help clients who are, running reviews on their own and looking at hundreds of different agencies.
Yeah. We are coming to the close of the half hour, but I wanted to ask you one more thing. If you've got a little bit of time, again, it's something that we talked about before we got on live today, which was about budgets, client budgets, when they say they have a budget, when they don't, what they mean when they say they don't have a budget, and how we're handling it now, and maybe how agencies could handle it better. So when a client says, look, we don't have a budget, should the default response be, I don't believe you, and I think you're just trying to get information from me? So then you have a number to give to the agency you actually want to hire, or is it because they truly don't know and they actually need some guidance, or somewhere in between?
Well, Jody, it's a great question, and some of the answers to that are in the agency search simplification report. Excellent. Which, by the way, anybody can get on our website. Many times clients don't know. So going back 20, 30 years, when media selection was actually pretty darn simple, a senior level marketer had a pretty good idea of what they'd have to spend to reinvigorate a brand, to introduce a brand, to add a line extension, to do whatever. These days, it's so complex they don't. And oftentimes they are looking to an agency as an expert to make some recommendations. It gives the agency the opportunity to present a couple of options to a client. And I will, on the other side, say that the ANA's recommendation in that report I mentioned is at least a range, right? You may not have an exact number because you don't know it, but at least, let's have a ballpark range. Is it a $3 million opportunity, a $30 million opportunity, $120 million opportunity? Clients will have a pretty good idea. And I think it's certainly easy enough to say, if a client says, well, I don't know what my budget is, well, could we, can we figure out a range together? Because then we can maybe even present you some ideas within, different ideas in the range.
That's right. I also, in so many things, I apply it to my own personal life. I recently did some renovations on a house that I own. And yeah, again, like the whole issue of budget is really hard because I don't know. I mean, I know how much money I have, but I also don't know how much it costs to renovate a kitchen. Actually, I know that it's not just one cost. I could probably do it for as little as 10K, and I could probably do it for as much as 150,000K. And so, yeah, to have someone, my contractor happened to be great, and the our dialogue of like, well, here's what I think I can afford, and here's what I want. This is going to be the purpose of the house. Here's how I'm going to use the kitchen. Here's how long I think I'm going to own this house. They were then able to come back to me and say, here's what we think you should do, and here's how much it's going to cost. And so it was a dialogue.
And clients should be willing to have that dialogue.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard for people to admit they don't know, but a great discussion on objectives and what the KPIs are for the campaign or the project or the assignment, that can help draw out ideas that an agency can use to formulate reasonably prospective budgets.
Yeah. As always, when I do these LinkedIn lives, and I have such a treat of inviting people like you on, Matt, I look at the clock and I'm like, well, there goes our half hour, and I feel like we're just beginning. But if I want agencies to be able to contact you, one, I would love you to tell us a little bit about when and where and how we can get that report, and two, I'm sure a lot of the folks that I talk to are already 4A's members, but a lot of the folks that I talk to are not. So maybe if they're intrigued about becoming a member of the 4A's and learning about the benefits, how do they reach you?
Sure. So the report I mentioned and the new report on the cost of pitching, which will be up, as I said, I think about 2 weeks on the site, just go to 4as.org.
Okay. And I think Megan might also have like a screen for us too. If we
okay, good.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Your beautiful
so
face.
Yeah, AAAA.org. You don't need to be a member to access that particular report. If you're interested in membership, you can email me right there, and I will connect you with, just to use the lingo, I'll connect you with the account person responsible for the region in which you're in.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I for one cannot wait to get my hands on that report. So listen, thank you so much for being here today, Matt. And this is like, I hope this is as much of a treat for others as it is for me, the conversation. And I think I think we scratched the surface, but I hope that what we did talk about was useful and offered the folks who are listening or will be listening to the recording another perspective on some questions that I know are questions that agencies ask themselves all the time about business development. So thank you so much.